started now. Yes, so I'm recording. Okay.
It's only me and Anna.
Yes, they will come.
The logo just
Don't
came.
worry. That's fine. Okay, Noor, Aya, and Anna. Okay, so let's continue with this classification of the images.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. This is Leticia. Okay, so let's continue with this classification of the image. Today we are doing the last classic image, or modernity in the classical sense. We're not post-modernity. And so far we have seen a number of spheres like perception, and we've said that when you perceive, you describe. We have seen also affection, and when you are in affection, you express. We have seen the impulse image, where you impress, the action image, where you are acting, and today we are seeing the mental image, which is when you reflect. Now, you see, these types of images really pertain to whole domains. You can, for some reason, have as a project or as a worry the project of describing something and showing how you understand it. This would be perception. You could want to just express emotions, sensations that will place you in the affection image, or you can or you would like to show how impulses and instincts inhabit us. This would be the impulse image. You would, in the action image, you aim at changing things and then acting in the world. This is part of the action image. And today we're going to see an image which is the mental image, where your aim is to reflect. Your aim is to reflect, and we will see while going through that, what's at stake in such a reflection is actually to change or to have an impact on the rules and regulations that actually configure, in what concerns us, the artistic domain, and or it can be to change the rules that govern society, customs, or wherever. As you know, we live in human societies where you have rules and regulations, and let's say, for example, you have the academic rules of the arts, and as an artist, you could have as a project to challenge the academic rules of the arts, and we'll see that such challenge requires a very specific type of art, which pertains to the mental image. Now, where are we when we are dealing with the mental image? Last time we have seen that the whole action image is situated in what we call a milieu. Now, what is a milieu? A milieu is really the actualization of the forces and the qualities, meaning the powers and the qualities. What I'm saying is very simple. Like, for example, when you have the wind, this is a force, or when you have the red of the flower, the ice, this is a quality, and you have coldness, which could be an intensity or a force. And when you live in such milieus, you are really taken within these forces. Or if you conceive something as a set of qualities and forces, you are in an action image. And in that case, if you want, the rule is the rule of action-reaction. You feel things by acting on them, and the more you act on them, the more you feel them. For example, the more I push a concrete block, a heavy concrete cube, The more I feel, how heavy it is. So action, reaction. And the action image is really like taken into these kind of force relations, which are or which make the milieu. Okay, so our everyday life, more or less, is really like configured or most of the time taken into this kind of way of relating to things as part as being forces, and we are a force and we relate to each other as a force relates to other forces. And this is what you have called last time a duel. A duel is simply when you are a force, like a cowboy who needs to shoot at another cowboy, and the best one, the stronger one, is the one who shoots faster. So this is, if you want the action image, you need to understand that you are taken into this kind of world of forces, and the aim there is to change the milieu, is to bring something new in the milieu. Now, with the mental image, we're dealing with something a little bit different and a little bit more delicate to understand, but when you understand it, well, you see where you are, it must be fine. It is what you call a context, which is not a milieu. I know in our everyday language we have a tendency to confuse the context with the milieu. We say it's the Lebanese context, it's the Lebanese milieu, as if they are interchangeable. Here we are using this word a little bit more technically, because a context pertains to the laws and the customs which permeate a human society. You see, you could be in the Lebanese milieu, but you don't belong to the customs. Let's suppose you just came from, I don't know, from a foreign country, you are visiting, you are a tourist, let's say, and even though you are part of the Lebanese milieu, you could be affected by the explosions, you could be affected by pollution, you could be affected by nice and bad things on your physical level in a way. It remains that you don't belong to the customs, you don't belong to the traditions, in here tradition and the meaning of a laws and regulations, be it the laws of the states or the law of society. So what makes the difference between an action image and the mental image? The difference is between what you call an action and an act. An action, as I've just said, is simply a relation of force to force. Let's take an example, the example of giving birth. When you want to give birth, you push, you pull, and this is like action, reaction, it's force. How strongly should I push, and how strongly should the nurse, doctor pull, and stuff like that. And this is how you give birth. Fine. This is a strictly physical thing, it's action. It remains that when you give birth, you have what you call an act of birth. Now, an act of birth is a little bit different from the action of giving birth, because the act of birth requires a third party, which is in this case the state, and the state is going to register that indeed this child is yours and it was given birth at this date, and by that you have rights and you have like an ascendance on the one who you gave birth to. But also, the baby which is just born acquires rights and he's now recognized in the symbolic community, meaning he's recognized by the state or by the society to which it belongs. Okay, so this is, if you want, the difference action act. If you take the sexual act, most languages don't say the sexual action, they say the sexual act, because for them, the sexual action implies immediately an act, which is a relation between those who are having sex. This is why the sexual acts are called acts and very rarely actions. Now, what does it mean is that in these societies, at least in the language that we have received from these societies, it means that the sexual action immediately implies a relation and a binding relation, which is the love relation or whatever relation you want to put into that. And it's a binding relation, meaning after the sexual act, you feel that you are, in a way, indebted or related to those with whom you are having these actions. Of course, there are exceptions there, but I'm not talking about exception. I was just commenting on this difference action act. So, to see this a little bit better, I've said that the act implies a third party. You know, when you have an act of marriage, there's you, your spouse, and the priest, or there's you, your spouse, and the whatever system you're in, be it civil marriage or religious marriage, you will have the third party standing there, which is going to represent or make the relation between the two other parties. So you have 1, 2, and 3. 1, 2 are those who are contracting, and the third is the one who registers the contract. You know, when you want to sign a contract, there's you, the other person with whom you are signing a contract, and then there is the notary, which is the one who is going to validate the contract and register the contract. And hence, relations, they are three-parted, and they are binding, like when you sign a contract or you get marriage, or you get married. Now, what does it mean they are binding? So let's suppose I throw money on the floor, and then someone else comes and picks the money after I have left. In this situation, you don't have a binding relation. You have actually two actions which are distributed in two halves. I throw the money, action 1. Someone else picks the money, action 2. And these combination of actions do not create a relation. The guy who picked the money after I left doesn't owe me anything, and he's not indebted to me in any way. So, in order to have a binding relation, meaning a real relation, what you have to do is like what we do here, mostly in Lebanon, when you have a corrupted state. You know, you go and you put the money in the pocket of the guy. This is how you bribe him. And if he, you know, receives the money, he knows that now he owes you a service. So, you know, when you put the money in the hand of someone and he takes that money, well, now he's indebted to you, or he has to give you, or he has to return the favor by a counter or another favor, and this is a binding relation. Take gifts, for example. Sometimes gifts are very dangerous because someone brings you a gift. It's a very expensive gift, let's say, and you feel a bit embarrassed. You don't know what to say, if you have to take it or not, because you know that if you accept the gift, well, you are a little bit in trouble, because now you'll have to give a counter gift one day, or maybe one day he'll ask you for something, and you won't be able to refuse. I don't know if you watched Francis Coppola's The Godfather. The mafia usually functions like that. The guy tells him, it's okay, no, I will not take money, but, you know, you will make me a service one day. I don't know if you remember the scene with the guy who went to Don Corleone and he asked him to take revenge for his son. And the mafia went and they beaten quite violently those who used to annoy the son of the doctor.
Sorry, but which movie was it? Sorry.
It's in The Godfather.
The Godfather.
Godfather 1.
But
You know,
wasn't it the daughter that got disfigured? So he asked
no, later the son of Don Corleone is disfigured, and they bring the doctor to fix the face of the son of Don Corleone, and this is a favor that he's paying back. There's no need to focus too much on that. It's just an example where you saw how, because Don Corleone made a favor for the doctor, now the doctor has to make a favor for Don Corleone, and this is how it goes in these kind of binding relations. So when you have a contract or a binding relation, how can you, or what entails from that? What entails from that, or what can be shown in that, is what you call a series of marks. Marks, not like marks, not like marquage, like marking. So what are these marks? The marks are simply the tokens that are going to express the clauses of the law. Very simple what I'm saying. If you sign a contract, and in this contract it says that you can use the apartment but not use the balcony, but you can smoke outside but not inside, all of these are the clauses of the contract, and you can show, you can either enunciate or show images of what you can do and cannot do in the contract. When you do that, when you show the different images or tokens that stand for what is being contracted, meaning what stands for what the law is going to govern, we call these marks or marquage. Now, why do we call them like that? Because as you know, we used to mark people when it comes to the law, literally, not metaphorically. I'm going to share my screen to show you that. We really like mark people. For example, this is a tattoo, and you know, in these tattoos on the face, what is actually tattooed is a contract. If you read a little bit about ethology and these primitive societies, this is a contract which is marked on the face of the one who is doing the contract. Usually it's contracts of marriage. So your contract of marriage is literally engraved on your skin or on your face. This is in Africa, where you have the carving of the face that shows your position in relation to the law and in relation to the other people who are governed by the law. So if you own something, if you are a husband, if you are a chief, if you are, I don't know, let's say a shaman or a kind of hunter, in relation to who you are and hence what we owe you and what you owe to the others, we mark you. And this is why I think you have this kind of, we call them marks, marquage. It's like when we used to, mark the cow with the red iron in order to show that the cow or the animal belongs to someone or to a tribe. So this is the marquage. The marquage is actually a sign or an image that is going to show the law. So these are markings. You can consider a ring to be a kind of mark, a kind of marquage. You can consider all kinds of ritualistic signs that are going to show your relation to the law as marks. But in what concerns us, the marks are then the tokens that are going to show the law. And the marquage, or the marking, can be done in two ways. The first way is what we call natural marquage. What does it mean in natural? Meaning you have a kind of natural set of associations. I explain. Again, it has to remain very, very simple. If I show you wine and then I show you cheese, what would you expect to see next if you are a Frenchman? Anyone?
Baguette.
A baguette, thank you. You see, and this is actually a custom. Why would you expect a baguette? Because in the French custom of eating, food customs, well, we eat, wine and baguette, bread. Now, of course, this is a custom, and this is how you see how you have now 3 marks that are going to show you the culinary custom of the French. You can do it in Lebanon. If you show hummus, and then I don't know, then you show ane, okay, you understand that this goes with that and this custom. Now, if you put ketchup with hummus, you understand there's something wrong, because the ketchup doesn't belong to this custom. It belongs to another custom. So actually, if you put ketchup on hummus and you are Lebanese who is aware of the culinary customs, you have what you call a démarquage. You have something that jumps out of the usual tradition, not tradition, it's the usual custom. And this is what you call a démarquage. Okay? You see, I think it's quite simple. You have a marquage when you show the custom and its components, i.e. cheese, wine, and bread. And you have a démarquage when you have a series of marks and all of a sudden, well, something jumps out of the series and is awkward. It shouldn't be in the series. We call that demark. You see, so the first way to do a kind of association of marks is by following a natural law or a natural custom. Now, we have the habit to eat ane and hummus and Arabic bread. We have another habit, the French habit of eating cheese and bread and wine. And this is how, when I tell you cheese, what do you think about? You think about baguette if you're a Frenchman. If you are from Tripoli, maybe you'll think about sweet, like in knefe, and depending on your custom, you will naturally associate a mark with another mark. Now, this is what we call natural relations. And natural relations are really like established by habit. Now, you have another type of relation, which is what you call an abstract relation. Now, what is an abstract relation? It's simply the occasion for you to associate two things which are not usually associated. What I'm saying is very simple. Let's take the most simple example, the law of gravity by Newton. Now, this is a law, so it pertains to regulations, to contexts, and it's a law of nature. And what did it associate, this law? It associated all the movements that we know of. So as you know, Newton, if you remember the beginning of this course, Newton, he's the one who discovered the law of gravity, where he showed that a falling apple moves by following the same law as the gravitation of the moon around the Earth and the gravitation of the Earth around the sun. So in this way, you are now relating the gravitation of the moon around the Earth to a falling apple, which we usually don't relate until we had Newton. So I give you another example that could be a little bit more visual. I don't know if you know the conics. The conics is very simple. It's a set of figures. And these figures are the point, two intersecting lines, a hyperbola, a parabola, a circle, and an ellipse. So you have 6 figures, point, intersecting lines, hyperbole, hyperbole, and circle, and ellipse. So at first sight, nothing relates these things. What does a point has to do with two intersecting lines, or with a circle, or with a hyperbola? They used to be considered as not part of a relation until, I forgot his name, a mathematician came and he showed us that actually all of these figures can be derived from the intersection of the cone by a plane. So imagine a cone. Unfortunately, I don't have the image. Imagine a cone, and if you cut the cone parallel or perpendicular to the cone, you will get a circle. If you cut it vertically on the side, you'll get a hyperbola or a parabola. And if you cut it in the middle, you'll get two intersecting lines. And if you cut it at the summit, you'll get a point. And this is how this mathematician showed that actually, if you find the right point of view, as we call it in mathematics, you will be able to show that all of these different figures, which had nothing to do with one another, are actually related. This is what you call a constructal, meaning the body from which we can construct all the other cases as sub-cases of the law. So if you take, again, the easier example of Newton, Newton's law of gravity will have cases like the falling apple, a moving train, a crashing car, the rotation of the moon around the earth, etc. And all of these would be cases of the constructal or of the formula, which is the law, and all of the other things are simply cases of that. All right, so I hope now you understood this kind of very basic constructive formula or scheme pertaining to the mental image. When you are dealing with mental images, as we will see, you usually build a marquage, series of marks that could be generated by a natural law or by an abstract law, doesn't matter. And one of the tricks would be to have a démarquage at one point. I'll show you here a démarquage from Hitchcock. Okay, you know, Hitchcock is maybe the movie maker of the mental image, and Hitchcock is going to do something like that. I'll show you the dress scene. So this is from Spellbound, and in so this is from Spellbound. This is Valentine. He's a doctor that has issues, and he encounters this other doctor, which is Ingrid Bergman. And they're about to kiss. As you see, the doors are opening. We'll see what this image stands for. This is a metaphor, as you will see soon. So the doors are opening. Everything seems. And then you have this. You see, he starts to see things here.
Something about your room. No, I don't understand. Forgive me. Something struck me. I've been having a rather bad time with my nerves.
Okay. So I hope you got this scene. Yeah? You see in the scene you have these lines that are going to jump out of this thing which is going on, and they pertain to the psychological equilibrium of Valentine. And these lines are actually a démarquage, meaning something in the normal world, which is governed by a norm, a psychological norm, is going to come and disturb the normalcy of his psyche by breaking the usual unfolding of his life, which is a demarcation. And Hitchcock is known for a lot of demarques, for a lot of démarquage. For example, in the beginning of The Birds, you have to see the scene with the eyes of the law. So I'll try to quit this. Now I'll describe, and this gets a bit okay. So this is from the birds. And the scene begins with well, it begins by showing you nature and the humans. I'll show you. So it's later. Anyways, the girl came. Oh,
You all right? Yes.
so the seagull attacking the woman is a dimar. Now, why is it a dimar? You can tell me it looks like an action, and actually, this is what we need to understand. So, if you look at the beginning of birds, as I hope you will, I can't here show you the whole thing, it takes too much time. At the beginning of, especially the sequence, you see that the woman is moving in a kind of quite harmonious scenery, where fishermen are fishing, where you have birds flying in the air, where the water is clean, you have a forest, you have dogs, everything is nice. And you need to understand actually this scene as a marcation rather than a parallel montage presenting a milieu. Now, what's the difference? If you take Anouk, in Anouk, he shows you the milieu. He shows you the wind, the ice, the bear, and this is how you see what is present in this milieu as a number of forces. While actually here, what Hitchcock is showing us is not a number of forces, but it is the contract between humans and nature. How do we know that? We know that because of the unfolding of the movie. Of course, if I just show you that, it could be an action. But when you watch the movie, you see that the movie is all about how humans perverted their relation to nature, and they ruined the contract which was between them and the other animals by, overexploitation, cruelty, and this is why it's a marquage. Now, what does this marquage consist of? The marquage consists of, as I've said, of showing the pact. First, the pact between man and nature by showing how each creature is in its own place, in its own natural place. And then, at one point, you have a démarquage, meaning an animal who is not supposed at all to attack you, attacks you, which is the seagull. This is what you call a démarquage. A démarquage, when you have something which is normal, which is normalcy, and this jumping out of the normalcy indicates that something is changing in the law or in the contract, or that someone had broken this law or this contract. I hope this is clear. This is why Hitchcock used to say, well, you should never, pick birds which are too scary, because of course this ruins the moment of the démarquage, of the demark. If you bring birds that look like, I don't know, like vampires, they're not demarks anymore. They are demarks when they are supposed to be in this place in accordance to the natural order, and when all of a sudden they change their places in accordance to the natural order, and you understand that the natural order itself is changing, meaning something is wrong in the contract between humans and animals. Okay, I hope this is clear. And Hitchcock, of course, is the artist of these marks and demarks. Okay, so I hope this first concept is clear. Marks, demarks. Marquage, I'm going to show you what the contract is made of. The birds are in the sky. The people are fishing gently. A love story between a man and a woman. Everything is fine, apparently in accordance to the laws of nature. And all of a sudden, something breaks. Something jumps out of its natural position, meaning in this case, out of its legal position. And you have this kind of eruption, which indicates a possible breaking of the law. So, so far, so good. This is, if you want, we are just getting our vocabulary and identifying images and constructive methods so far. So, I told you that the opening of the door could be a metaphor, stand as a symbol. And here I think really, as far as I'm concerned, that artists need to be able to master this kind of language, or at least be able to recognize, what's the difference between a metaphor, a sign, a symbol, a mark, a demark, and all of these things in a kind of more or less well-controlled way. So if you take what is a metaphor? A metaphor, you see, is not really a mark. I explain why. What is a metaphor? We hear this a lot, like it's a metaphor, it's like that, this is meaning this. So let's look at the metaphor more closely. Now, what is a metaphor? A metaphor is actually when you are going to transpose, you are going to move the schema of an entity into another entity. This is a metaphor. I explain. So let's suppose you have a lion and a sheep. Well, if the sheep jumps like the lion, you have your metaphor. It's not that complicated. You see, the metaphor relies first on a translation, or a kind of transposition of the schema. Now you tell me, yeah, what is a schema? Schema is a technical word that I hope you will remember, because it's a very important word for aesthetics. It's simply a spatio-temporal dynamism, meaning the way the line moves, let's say a jump of a lion, this is the schema of the line. The way a sheep moves is the schema of the sheep. And if you transpose this into that, you have a metaphor. Now, from where did we get this word? We got it from Kant. And Kant used to say you have to distinguish three things. You have to distinguish the concept, let's say the concept of a circle. Now, what is the concept of a circle? The concept of a circle is simply the description of the proportions of the circle. For example, a circle is the collection of the points which are equidistant to a point. This is the definition of a circle. See, the definition of a circle is not that complicated. It simply says in what proportion or in what relation is a point to other points in order to get a circle. Well, if all the points are at an equidistance from one point, you get your circle. This is a definition. Now, and then you have something else, which is what you call the image or the figure, which is the thing you have drawn on the paper, which looks like a circle. This is what you call the image of the circle. And the third thing is the way you get the concept into the image, meaning the compass. So you have the definition, the compass, and the image that you produce. It's not that complicated. If you have a compass, you are going to fix the point of the compass on the paper, and you are going to rotate the leg of the compass, and this is how you produce an image that corresponds to the concept. So you have concept, schema, and image. You have circle, the definition, which is a relation of proportions between elements. And then you have a spatiotemporal dynamism. I fix the leg and I move the other leg. I fix, I move. This is a dynamism. And last, you have the image. These are the three basic notions. And hence, when you want to make a metaphor, what do? You are going to transpose the schema of A into B, or the schema of B into A, and this is how you get a metaphor. It's as simple as that. There's nothing, there's no more into it. You just transpose this into that, and you get your metaphor. So if you have the same schema between two collections or two entities that is echoing these two things, well, you get your metaphor. I hope this is clear. So as you can see, metaphors so far are very simple images where the thing moves like another thing. I'll show you here a very nice metaphor made by Hitchcock. I don't think it's a hazard if Hitchcock uses also metaphors, because this is really the language of the mental image. So this is a metaphor by Hitchcock. What you will see here is a man and a woman, and the man is shooting the woman. Actually, the woman used to be the lover of the man, but the man discovered that the man is actually a general with Fidel Castro, and he discovers that his wife is actually a spy. Okay, that's it. Did you see the metaphor? Did anyone see the metaphor?
It was kind of playing
Huh?
something.
No? Okay. Did anyone see something and he saw a metaphor? Anna?
I said no, actually.
Ah, you said no.
If you
Let me
could
see. I could repeat. Here he's shooting her. I'll take it from the shot. So he shot her. Did you see the metaphor?
It's like he wins at chess.
The dress is there. What's wrong with the dress?
No, he wins at chess because they're on a tile that resembles the chess table. Maybe.
maybe the dress looks like blood.
Thank you. The dress is like blood. This is a metaphor. You see, metaphor, you need to transpose the way something moves into something else. The dress here is moving like blood, so it's a metaphor of the blood, and this is why you have a kind of nice image into that. I hope it's clear. So, in order for Hitchcock to tell us that this is blood, he's using here a metaphor. You see, a metaphor is that. You have all kinds of metaphor as long as you take the scheme of something and you put it in something else. This is why I told you first in the beginning when we saw the scene with Valentine kissing Ingrid Bergman, that when the door opens when you kiss, this is a metaphor because, you know, opening and opening, they stand in this kind of relation to each other. Okay? So if you want another metaphor, would be the last scene in Northwest, where at the end the man and the woman they can at last make love. And Hitchcock here, he makes this metaphor where he shows you a train going inside a tunnel, and here you understand that this is a penetration, meaning the same movement between the elements is here echoing or being echoed between the elements, penetration, penetration, and this is how you have a metaphor. So Hitchcock more or less uses these a lot, and hence I hope you understood the notion of a metaphor. Now the thing is that a metaphor itself can stand as a symbol, but a symbol is not necessarily a metaphor, and a metaphor can be a mark. And this is really where you have to practice and become a bit, I don't know, a bit, you have to exercise on these things in order for you to be able to, distinguish symbol, metaphor, abstract symbol, mark, demark, and these things. So what is a symbol? A symbol is when you have...
Paris.
Yes. Yes.
I remember there was in one of the other earlier courses with you.
Yeah.
You talked about a movie where someone was picturing a cold person, like a woman, and then he showed flowers in the snow.
Yeah.
Can that be a metaphor?
Well, this is what we call metonymy, when you show the same quality among different things and you show them separated. It's a very good question. So if I show you a face which is cold, and then I show you eyes, I'm not transposing the movement of the eyes in the face. Is it clear?
Yes.
Okay, so let's suppose I show you here I'm just showing you a common quality, but I'm not making the one move like the other. Okay? Did you get the difference?
Yes, thank you.
So for example, I can show you blues and blue and something else which is of the same quality, but as long as they don't move in the same way, you don't have a metaphor. You have what we call, it's an association of qualities, and that's it. So as you can see here, if I show you a cold face and an icy landscape, by showing this and that, I'm showing what is common as a quality, but I'm not showing that this is that, or this is like that in the sense that this is moving like that. I hope you're getting this difference, okay? Here the robe is like blood, but it doesn't mean that the robe has the quality in itself of blood, okay? You see, it's a very delicate thing, and this is where you have to start looking at, but this is perfect, okay? So let's look now at a symbol, and we'll get back to these examples. Now, what is a symbol? Unfortunately, and this is the saddest thing as far as I'm concerned, the usual reading of the art is that, this is the symbol of that. Like the tree is the symbol of life, and the woman is the symbol of, I don't know, of sin, and the man is the symbol of evil. And this is a painting about, it's a symbolic painting, which is very sad because most of the time, all what you have is readings of the arts which are like that, meaning this means that. If I put black on my painting, it means death. If I put white, it means joy, and it's a very sad thing. But this is how the symbolic is usually used. It remains that even when you say black is the symbol of death, well, it's not a symbol because in this case, it's going to be a sign. So you see, you have a difference between a sign, a metaphor, and a symbol. Now, what is a sign? See, a sign is not that complicated. It is like when you have, like signals. I'll show you here a sign. So if you take something like that, these are abstract signs. If I show you the weather symbols, as they call them in code, these are signs. You know that when you have this on your phone, it means that it's a cloudy day. When you have this, it means that it's a rainy day, and so on and so forth. These are simply signs. They're not metaphors. They are images that signify something, provided a custom or a convention. And you know this by knowing that. If you take the red light or the green light when you are driving, these are signals, meaning they are signs. If you see red, you understand I have to stop. So if you see green, you understand I have to move. And hence these are signs. I hope for the sign it's clear. You have a conventional image or a visual thing, and associated to this image, by convention and custom, you have a meaning. And of course, the relation is conventional, meaning we could say that the red will mean move and the green will mean stop. There's absolutely no necessity that relates the signs to its sense or to its signification. This is why the relation between sign and signification is conventional, and the convention is the custom that associates these two. So these are signs. I hope, at least this is what I hope, that you will not reduce all the history of the art to a reading of signs, like, you know, black is death. So these are what we call signs. Metaphors, on the other hand, or as I have just say, it's when you transpose the dynamism of something into something else. This is what you call a metaphor. A metaphor is really when you, as you have seen with the dress moves like blood, so it's a metaphor. You have something else called metonymy. Metonymy is when you have two images which are separated, but you relate them as to their movement. I explained, it's not that complicated. If I show you my hands trembling, then I show you the leaves of a tree trembling. Given that you have trembling, you have here a kind of metaphor. It's not a metaphor, we call it a metonymy, where you have actually a relation between these two images that make you understand that my hands are trembling like the leaves of a tree, but you don't see it. You don't see it in one image. You see it actually in two images. So a metaphor will show you in one image the relation between the two entities, like the dress which spread like blood, and you see it spreading like blood in one image. And if here Hitchcock would have liked to make a metonymy, what he would have shown is the dress falling like a dress, and then blood spreading in another image on the side. Associated the of the dress. This would be a metonymy. I hope this. A symbol actually is when you will have an image that is going to concentrate a number of relations. This is what you call a symbol. Or an image that is going to illustrate, as you say, symbolize a whole situation, meaning a lot of relations which are now visible in only one image. So I explain the symbol. So if you take in Hitchcock, I don't know if you have seen Rare Window. In Rare Window, you know, the story is the story of a guy whose leg is broken. His fiancée is around, you know, to help him or to see him. And this guy, he suspects his neighbor to have killed his wife, meaning his own wife, the neighbor's wife. And in order for him to know if he really had killed his wife, he needs to send his fiancée to the apartment of his neighbor in order to see if the ring of the wife is still there. Because if the ring of the wife is there and her necklace and stuff like that, and you know, her okay, her ring. So if her ring is still there, it will mean that actually he killed her and he kept the ring because he's intending to sell the ring. Now it remains that the fiancée is quite in love with her boyfriend, but the boyfriend is a bit like an old boy who doesn't want to get married. And the movie has another story where the girl is trying to show her boyfriend that even though she is or she might be living with him, their life can be very adventurous and entertaining, and it won't be the boring life of a couple. And this is when you have this symbol, it's an image in the movie, where you see these two relations converging into one image, which is the image of the ring. I'll show you that. So this is when the woman is
Lisa, what are you doing? Don't go.
So here she's looking at the thing. She found the, you know, the purse of the dead wife.
Come on, get out of there.
She said, ring Sorrel's phone the second you see him come back.
We'll ring it right now.
Oh, no, give her another minute. It's lonely, Hans. Oh, call the police.
Give me the police. 6th precinct.
Yes. Mr. Jeffries, the music stopped.
What? Lisa. Look, Lisa.
Precinct 6, Sergeant Auger.
Hello. Look, a man is assaulting a woman at 125 West 9th Street, 2nd floor, the rear. Make it fast. L.B. Jeffries. Chelsea 25598.
What's she trying to do? When's she turning in?
She's a smart girl.
Smart girl, she'll get herself arrested.
It'll get her out of there, won't it?
Look, the wedding ring. Turn off the lights.
Okay, I hope you saw the. Okay, you can tell me now what is this image here? The wedding ring. Now, this image is a symbol. Now, why is it a symbol? Because this image alone concentrates practically the whole problem of the movie, which is that the man is a criminal and she wants to marry her boyfriend. You have now two sets of relations, the relation of marriage and the relation of murder, which are coming into this one image, which is the ring. Okay, and I think Hitchcock's the work he does is to find a treatment where you will be able at the end to have one image that is going to concentrate the whole plot or the whole relations present in the plot. Now you see this is a symbol. Why is it a symbol? Because you are concentrating a number of relations on one image. Now, is it a metaphor? No, it's not a metaphor, because you don't have the transposition of a dynamism into from one entity to the other. It's simply a symbol. Now, you can have another symbol that is going to express a totality. For example, at the end of the birds, you have an image, which is a very strong image, which is an image where you see a kind of reversed order, and this reversed order, which is a new law, which is that now animals dominate men and not anymore men dominate animals. This is a new law. It's like the heydays of humanity are over, and this is given in one image, a very powerful image, I think, at the end of the birds to express this reversal between man and nature. And I'll show you this image. So this is at the end of birds. They've been attacked by the birds, and now they're trying to escape.
Next.
Stay there.
Can I be the lover, Snitch? They haven't harmed anyone.
All right, Richard.
Now this image is the symbol, okay? The abstract symbol with the new law, where you see humans trapped in a little cage, and the birds are outside occupying space. Now this is a symbol of this reversal of the new law. And as you can see, this is also, in a way, a metaphor, because now we can say that birds are like men and men are like birds. It's a metaphor by reversal, where actually the way birds used to occupy space is now attributed to humans, and the way humans used to occupy space is attributed to birds, because birds are free and men are in a cage. So you can see here that a metaphor is standing as a symbol, meaning as the image that is going to express the new totality or the new law. Okay, so you could have a metaphor that stands as a symbol, or you can have a metaphor which is only a metaphor. Remember the scene with the blood. The scene with the blood, the robe, the dress that spreads like blood. It's not the symbol of anything. It's just, you know, a way to make us understand that she's dead. It's a simple metaphor, but sometimes metaphor can themselves stand to signify the new law, which is in this case the reversal of the natural order into a kind of new order where animals dominate. So this is a symbol that is taken from a metaphor. If you read the Bible, the Apocalypse, you have a very strong metaphor, which is a mutton that jumps and eats meat like a lion. So it's a sheep. You know, the sheep used to be the sign of the good Christian, the innocent, nice Christian community. And at the end of days, in the apocalypse, it's written that the sheep is going to turn into a lion, and you see the sheep jumping like a lion. This is a metaphor, the sheep jumping like a lion, but it's the symbol of the end of days because it's the new law, it's the apocalypse. And this image alone stands for the new era, and this is why we consider it to be a symbol. Okay, now when you take art, if you take the art of Gauguin, you see Gauguin is really someone who is going to work a lot on schemas. Gauguin is someone who is going to really like work on schema. What does it mean? It means that going to his paintings. I hope it's here. If you look at this painting, which is the Vision After the Sermon, it's by Gauguin. Now, in this painting, as you can see, there's something a little bit weird, which is that you have an angel here fighting with a man, and you have the Britons, which is quite weird, because usually these things don't belong to the same space. Now, what is Gauguin doing? Gauguin actually, the story behind this painting is that Gauguin used to live in Britain, in Bretagne, and you had there a custom that men after work used to fight. Used to have this kind of custom to fight together. And when they used to fight, Gauguin used to see the fight of Israel with God, because for him, this line, the line of two interlocked bodies, which you can find in the Britons fighting and in many fights, is actually the schema that makes the Briton and God fighting with Israel communicate. So what Gauguin does is that he shows you that if you look at the way things occupy space and time, the way they are schematized, the way they move in space and time, like a fight, you will start seeing echoes, you will start seeing relations between things, and Gauguin is going to invest into these relations. For example, in his big painting, Where Are We Going and From Where Are We, you know, the one, what is it? This one, where do we come from and what are we? Where are we going? For Gauguin, this painting totalizes all the schemas of life, all the postures, the key postures of life. You know, when you are a child, when you are a grown-up, when you are old, and he totalizes all of these postures in one painting, which is going to become, the painting is going to become the symbol of life, because he's totalizing all these schemas. I hope that Gauguin used to write to his wife that he was walking in the street and he saw a man, an old man, curved on his stick because he's old and tired. And this for him is the same line, this kind of falling line of the back towards the earth, is the same line as the Sol Pleureur, which is a tree whose branches fall down towards the water. And for Gauguin, this is the line of sadness. Now, what does it mean, the line of sadness? It means that sadness, the concept, has a way to manifest itself in space-time via this dynamism of a falling line. This is the schema of sadness, which is to fall in a curvature towards the earth. And it's, of course, embodied in many figures like the Sol Pleureur, an old man, a tired worker, etc., etc. And this is how you can see how sadness as such can be concentrated in one painting. If you want to make a painting on sadness, you will show all the figures that encompass this schema, or you can show all the schemas of sadness, meaning all the different ways sadness occupies space and time. And Gauguin is really into this kind of paradigm. I hope you will read his letters, where he really explains that actually he's interested into this kind of thing. Now to push this further, just for you to see how an artist, by following a line of thought, is able to determine what he's doing to an extreme. For Gauguin, the issue was, as you know, he began as a symbolist painter, but for him, what he wanted to access is a kind of language of beings. He used to think that things, the way they move and the way they manifest themselves to us, talk to us a mysterious language, and the painter's job is to be able to read this language in nature and in all manifest things. This is why he needs to be able to capture how he now is organizing himself. Gauguin used to have an archive. He used to have an archive with many pictures, reproductions, little drawings, all what you want, in order to capture all of these schemas and the way things occupy the world. So he had an archive. This is number one. Second, he used to paint on chalk. You know, all his painting has this chalky texture, because for Gauguin, what he wanted to reproduce in his paintings is the effect of ceramics. Now, why Gauguin would be interested in ceramics if he wants to express a kind of community or common language of things? It's because in ceramics, as you know or might not know, when you cook the colors, all the colors have the same degree, as we say, and this is very present in the paintings of Gauguin. They all have the same temperature, as we say in pictorial jargon, meaning this blue and this red has the same temperature, even though they're not the same color. But also when you cook it, when you cook the ceramics, all the lines have the same curvature because they were cooked at the same temperature. All what you need to do is look at the ceramic, you see all these, there's a kind of common wave that permeates the ceramic cracks, etc. And this is a kind of echoing of the lines between each other. So when you look at the Gauguin painting, what you have to look is that all the lines communicate with this other, and this creates this kind of feel of harmonious solidity that you find in Gauguin. Last, he used to use blue and black to underline the lines. So it's a painter of the line, because of course for him what is most important is the line, because the line is what carries all these curves, counter curves, is what carries the schema and what gives you access to this mysterious language of nature that he wanted to capture. I hope you got now this idea. So I hope this is clear. So I'll just show you another one to see if you have the eye or if you are getting into these things. If you take Frida Kahlo. Now, Frida Kahlo is a mental artist. In which sense? In this sense, if you take this painting by Frida Kahlo, and here you need to read to understand what is going on, obviously. Frida Kahlo said this is actually, she painted this after her abortion. She aborted twice, as far as I know, and after her abortion, she painted this. And here you have a treatment with signs, symbols, and metaphors. If you take this snail here, Frida Kahlo says the operation that she underwent was very slow, like a snail, meaning when she was going through the abortion process, it was a very slow and very painful process, as if it is a snail, and hence the slowness of the abortion and the slowness of the snail communicate together. This is like that. Of course, here you have a metonymy. It's not exactly a metaphor because you have two images which communicate by their schema, and you have a metonymy. And if you read, you will have this is a sign or a symbol for that time where she used to live. She was surrounded with this kind of flower. This is another symbol, so on and so forth. And the whole picture constitutes a symbol of her abortion. So if you take the broken column, again, you have here the vertebrate column and the Roman canon communicate with each other in a metonymic way. And this image is the symbol of Frida when she went through the accident of the tramway. And actually, when you look at these pictures, what Kahlo is trying to say, or to put in an image, is actually her life as being governed by a destinal law. You know, Frida Kahlo is someone who went really through all kinds of atrocities, and it's as if there's a law of destiny that makes her go through all of these awful episodes. And each episode then becomes like a mark of this destinal law that she is going through. Now, I'm showing you this just to relate to customs. You see, in this here, Frida Kahlo is dressed in the traditional Mexican custom. And here she is dressed as a European, which is the other custom. And she used to say that her husband, Diego Rivera, he used to like her like that, and not like this, while her mother used to like her dressed as a Westerner and not like a Mexican. And here you see the conflict between the customs. I'm telling you this just for you to, you know, you have to look for like clues when you read an artist. If an artist is dealing with customs, well, most probably he's in the mental image, because this is the domain. Customs are where we deal with the mental. Customs are dealt with in the mental image.
Faris,
So, yes.
the
Yes.
last painting you showed us.
The two Frida?
Yes. Where does
Yes.
it stand? Like, where is it? It's a symbol.
Yeah. It's a symbol because, you know, Frida Kahlo had a big problem, which is that her mom, which was Western oriented, I think she was herself from a Western descendant, her mom. Let's say in Lebanon, it's as if your mom is French educated and your dad is just Arabic educated or just Lebanese educated, I don't know what to call it. He's just local. And you have this conflict between, you know, should I be Frenchy or should I be like a traditional Arab? And this is what is at stake here. What Frida Kahlo is showing here is that in her life, this kind of opposition between the customs, the Western and the Mexican traditional custom, played a big role in her life. And she's putting that into this, it is now a symbol, in this case, the whole painting is a symbol of this conflict between the customs. Now, I didn't dive much into this one, but all I'm trying to tell you here is that when you have a painter dealing with customs, as you can see, you have a customary dress and another customary dress. Well, you can know or you can think that most probably he's in the mental image, because this is where we deal with these customs. I hope this is more clear.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, so now let's move a little bit further. You see, I said that you have this distinguish between action and act. Fine. The issue is that sometimes, or things become interesting when the action does not translate in a transparent way in the act. What does it mean? If you have watched Vertigo, as I hope you will watch it soon if you didn't watch it yet, you know, in Vertigo, the story is of this guy, and he's a policeman, and they are chasing a thief. And at one point, they are on the roof, and the guy jumped after the thief. The policeman jumped after the thief, which is Jon Stewart. And Jon Stewart falls on the roof, and he's hanging on the, on the side of the roof. And his colleague, another policeman, comes to help him, and he tells him, "Stretch your hand," meaning stop, give me your hand. But Jon Stewart is too afraid to give him his hand, so the other policeman bends a little bit too much, and he falls and he dies. Okay, so this is the story in short. Now, what is going on here? What is going on is that on the level of the action, Jon Stewart, in a way, was the cause of the death of the other policeman. But on the level of the act, Jon Stewart cannot be considered the murderer of the other policeman. I hope this is clear. You see, so it seems that you made an action where in the same time you are the murderer and you are not the murderer. And this is when you start oscillating and you have the vertigo, because am I guilty or not guilty? And you start spinning in your head between these two determinations, which are, am I guilty or not guilty? Now, what is interesting, if you watch the movie Spellbound, from which we have seen the scene with the dress and the stripes on it, when he kisses Ingrid Bergman, well, in this movie, Valentine is actually a man who, when he was playing with his brother when they used to be young, they were playing sliding, like toboggan on the side of the house, on the rail of a staircase. And he slides and he pushes his brother, and his brother falls on the fence of the house, and he dies like that. And you see the fence of the house are these lines, which are vertical lines. And this is the image that becomes traumatic for Valentine. This is why, as you have seen in the scene, each time he sees parallel lines, he freaks out. And you have the démarque. So anyway, what I'm trying to tell you is that in these two cases, which are taken from Hitchcock, what you can see is that actually you have one action which is double determined, which has two determinations. The same action is not a murder and a murder, and this is why you have the vertigo and you have this kind of spin. Now, of course, the whole movie in Hitchcock is going to be to resolve this double determination by discovering the real murderer, or by whatever is the story. But the dynamics of the movie goes towards discovering who is the to untying the double determination of the actions, meaning the action being registered twice as two opposite acts, murder and not murder, which leads to, am I innocent or not innocent? I hope this is clear. So you see the vertigo, which is a very interesting figure in the arts. The vertigo is when you have the same action leading to two determinations, which is going to make the hero or the protagonist be in a state of constant indecision. I hope this is clear. Now, the artist who invested into that way before Hitchcock is Marcel Duchamp. I think Marcel Duchamp is really a mental artist. It's what you call a conceptual artist. And we need to understand what is conceptual art. Contrary to what you hear most of the time, because I hear it all the time, conceptual art doesn't consist, you know, in bringing everyday objects and putting them in the museum. This is not conceptual art. And conceptual art has nothing to do with democratizing art by making you see that anything could stand as art and all these things that you hear of. Conceptual art is actually a very, very demanding and very delicate form of art, because it's an art whose sole purpose is to show you the idea in the image. I explain. This is the Moot fountain. As you can see, it's signed Moot 1917, and it's called a fountain. And as you can see here, what did Duchamp do? You know how the story goes for this urinal fountain. Duchamp went to the States, and he was part of this jury who was against the academia, and they said, against the American Academy of the Arts, and this kind of young people who were against the academy, they said that anyone who sends any work of art, provided that he pays $5, we will exhibit his work, because we don't care about all this academic crap, you know, all this academic nonsense. We are, you know, democratic to some extent. And indeed, Duchamp himself was part of the jury, and Duchamp have sent this piece, signed with a pseudo, which is Mr. Moot or Robert Moot, or I forgot the first one, so as Moot, and the jury refused only this piece. Now, why did the jury refuse this piece? Because they thought that it's going to be a bit insulting for the other participants in this exhibition, and actually this exhibition received more than 2,000 entries. So 2,000, people sent their work to be exhibited there. So it was a great success, but they rejected this one. So you can already see, actually, only from the story, and this is how I wish you would read the artist writings. You already hear that it's a problem of legality. There's a jury. It's a problem of regulations. We are rejecting the laws of the academia. And it's a problem of legitimacy. We cannot accept this, and we will accept that. Provided a certain custom, this is an insult or not an insult. So when you hear this or when you read this, even though it's just said, in a kind of very spontaneous way, you have to open your antennas and see that actually I am in the mental world here, because it's dealing with laws, regulations, juries, and the like. And indeed, the story goes that it was rejected. Now, what Duchamp did, and this is his cunningness and his virtuosity, is that he made his friend go tell a very famous gallerist in New York, I forgot his name, back then in the 1917, a very famous gallerist, a gallerist that used to not like the guys of the academia. He used to not like them, and he used to not like personally Duchamp. And when the gallerist heard from the friend of Duchamp that Duchamp himself sent to the gallerist that actually one of the pieces was rejected by the independents, this is how Duchamp and his friend used to call themselves when doing this exhibition, when he knew that, he became very happy, because for him this is like a stain, because the independents promised to exhibit absolutely anyone who pays $5, but he was very happy to know that they didn't exhibit this piece. So he went and he took a picture of this piece and he hanged it in his gallery of this piece. So actually this very famous gallery was the first to exhibit, in a way, the picture of the fountain made by Duchamp without the gallerist knowing that Duchamp set him up a trap in order for him to force him to put that picture there. Why I'm telling you all of this? Because here now you are seeing how you can start operating in the context of the art. The context of the art, galleries, institutions, what is acceptable and not acceptable. And in a way, with this kind of trick, Duchamp forced a recognized gallery to exhibit his fountain without them knowing that it is by Duchamp. So far, no one knows that it is by Duchamp. Duchamp, after the incident, resigns from the independent jury, and it's only much later that we knew that it was made by Duchamp. Now, what is at stake in this art? As you can see, it's a reversed urinal, and it's not a hazard. It's not a hazard. It's called fountain. Fountain usually it's a kind of object that gives you water, while a urinal is an object that receives urine, and they are actually the opposite of one another. The urinal is usually standing. As you can see, the water comes in from here, and it must be standing, while Duchamp put it at the horizontal, so he reversed the orientation of the urinal, and he calls it fountain. And in the urinal, then you can detect a whole number of opposites, which is fountain, which gives water, and urinal, which receives water. So you have fountain, urinal, standing, lying down, etc., etc. And you have, of course, the most important opposition, an industrial object, which stands as a object. Now, these are, if you want, the couples of opposites that are condensated in the fountain slash urinal. Now, why is he doing that? You know, Duchamp started quite young in the arts. So one of his most famous one is Nude Descending the Staircase. I'll comment on that soon. But you can already feel that there's a sense of humor. Nude, which is usually the model. And here you have the model moving, descending the staircase. And hence he started quite young. But the problem is that Duchamp, which was quite famous for the nude descending the staircase, by the way, and he was received as a honorary member in the independent jury because of that painting precisely, abandoned painting because for him, at the time where he was painting, meaning at the beginning of the century, 1910, 1912, what was introduced in the craftsmanship of painting is the tube of color and the photographic machine and the camera. Now, why for Duchamp, and here I hope you start to see how someone understands his context. Duchamp considers that with the introduction of these, when you can't anymore just be a painter. Now, why can't you just be a painter? Because as Duchamp says, the bachelor doesn't grind his chocolate anymore, which means that the painter doesn't make his colors anymore, given that these colors are ready-made, they are made by the industry. So you have ready-made colors and you have ready-made motif, meaning you don't need to draw anymore. All what you need is a projector and a camera to draw motif. And this is why Duchamp says the only thing is endowed with is to choose and name what is art or what can be an artwork. So far, we're not very advanced. 1 second, I'll get some water and you will have a break. So I'm saying that so far we're not that advanced. What is he trying to do? Now, to understand the context of Duchamp, You have to know that in the 1910s, you had a big crisis due to the whole industrialization of the craft of the painter, you know, the emergence of reproducible images, etc., etc. And hence, you had to rethink what it means to be an artist at that time. So at that time, you had things like that. This is the donkey of Boronali. Boronali was an Italian art critic who used to hate the modern artists like you know, Paul Klee, etc. Because he used to think that these are charlatans. And actually, if you bring a donkey, this is the donkey, it's called Lolo, the donkey, and you attach a brush on its tail, and you dip it in paint, well, the donkey can make paintings like all of these modernist painters, and hence a modernist painter is as good as a donkey. And this is a painting by Boronali, but this is by Lolo the donkey. And Boronali, the art critic, used to think that this is as good as, you know, a Cézanne or whatever other modernist paintings they were dealing with. So what is really at stake? What is at stake is that at the time of Duchamp, the question was that we didn't know anymore what art is. If you read Picasso, Matisse, Cézanne, they all ask this question: what is today? What is art today? And what is art today is expressed in the question, what is art? Point. What art is? And we don't know anymore what art is, given that it could be produced by a donkey or by someone like Cézanne or Matisse or Picasso. Okay, so you have this kind of problem. You have a kind of problem where the context of the art, meaning the law that governs the arts at that point in time, was itself problematic. We don't know anymore what art is today. And actually, what Duchamp is doing, what he's doing is that he's doing a work of art that forces you to ask the question, is this art or not art? By bringing together opposite determinations where you don't know anymore if it is art or not art. And this is what's happening here in the fountain. In the fountain, when you look at that, you know it's a urinal, but at the same time, it is instituted as a work of art. This is why I told this whole story of, you know, forcing the galleries to put the picture there, and after that, an article was written about it, and after the article was written about it, it became more and more famous, this little artwork, and when it became more and more famous, it established itself as an artwork, and this is why it is an artwork, and it's not an artwork, and this is when you have these opposite determinations. If you want to understand this better, I think the work that shows that the most is the one here, 11 rue Larrey. It's a door open close. You see, Duchamp used to live in an apartment, and he managed to make a door where when you close the bathroom, the room opens, and when you close the room, the bathroom opens. So this room here is always open and closed. You don't know if it's open and closed. And it has this kind of indetermination in the closure or the opening of the room. Now, this indetermination is crucial. Why it is crucial? Because in order for you to be able to reflect the context in an artwork, given that the context is that we don't know what art is today, well, you have to make artworks which oscillate between the opposite, and you don't know if it is this or that, an industrial object or an artwork, is it open or closed. So if you want an anecdote that echoes that, Marcel Duchamp, before he goes to New York, where he was member of the independent jury, before he goes there, he was with Breton at night, and he told Breton, let's flip a coin. If it's tails, I go to New York. If it's heads, I stay in Paris. So they took a coin and they flipped it. And Breton says in his memoir, he says, if actually this coin can flip forever in the air, everyone would understand us, and more precisely would understand Duchamp, because Duchamp has an aversion to the thesis, meaning Duchamp, he hates the thesis, to say this is something, to say art is, let's say, abstract painting, or to say art is industrial object. Duchamp has a kind of aversion for that, and not because he's cool, you know. This is another cliche that we hear a lot, you know, in art schools, art venues, and the like, which is, you know what, not to be very precise is really great, and not to say what things are is really great. And they think that Duchamp is part of that because he doesn't want to tell us what art is. Actually, Duchamp doesn't want to tell us what art is because he knows that at his time, we didn't know what art is. So the only way to express what art is to make that doesn't tell you what art is. I hope you're getting this kind of reflection. The only way to show the context is to show a context which is problematic, is to show a work of art which is problematic. And all the works of Duchamp, they are really like working on this double determination. If you take Trébuchet, this is a portmanteau that becomes trébuchet, meaning usually it's hanged to hang things. Now it's on the floor to make you fall, and you have these reversals. So this is trébuchet. This other one is hat rack, where you know the porte-chapeau becomes an araignée, and you have this kind of reversal and indetermination in these. Now, what is striking, I think at least, is that Duchamp himself made rotaries, which are like, they are practically like the
Okay, Bob, you'll get what you asked for.
they're like the opening of Vertigo. This is with the music of Cage, Nicolas Cage. And here you have the rotaries of Duchamp. Not this, this. You see, he made like, actually it's discs that he draws on, and when they turn, you between. So all I'm trying to tell you is this. All I'm trying to tell you is that if you take someone like Duchamp, his context, meaning the law that governs all artistic production at his time, was expressed in the question, what is art today? And I think the cunningness and smartness of Duchamp is that he didn't give an answer for that, like Matisse and Picasso and many others did. Like, we don't know what art is today, and the futurists, for example, said art today must be the introduction of movement, of industry. Picasso and the Cubists said art today must be to bring in many points of view, etc., etc. I think the cunningness of Duchamp is that instead of giving an answer, he gave a work, which is Fountain. I think it's his most iconic work. And in Fountain, you are forced to ask yourself, is this art or not art? And this is how this work is going to reflect the idea. It's going to show you the idea as if it's present here. If you take something else, like the Parthenon in Greece, I don't know if you know the Parthenon in Greece. The Parthenon, yeah, okay. The Parthenon in Greece, actually, the Parthenon in Greece is deformed, is distorted. How is it distorted and why is it distorted? It's distorted because it has to look perfect, while actually it's absolutely imperfect. So I'll let you hear this guy explain it.
Now, as they do this, they do some very interesting things, some things that you wouldn't expect. So when we look at the Parthenon, it looks like it's in perfect proportion. And in fact, you can apply that 1.618 to 1 proportion, for example, to the metapiece versus the triglyph, or you can apply it to the entire face of the structure. They're trying to make this as idealized as possible. They also do something else interesting. This is an exaggerated image, but all of the columns of the Parthenon actually tilt inward, and at the same time, well, basically they tilt inward, and at the same time, the stylobate, the foundation that they're sitting on, is curved. In fact, it's about 12 inches over the width of the Parthenon, and your first thought is going to be, well, of course they did, they need drainage. But why do you need drainage for a building that's always covered, that has a solid roof over it? No, what they're doing is they're doing this for optics. By tilting those columns inward, it makes the building look straighter. It makes the columns look straighter. Our eyes, because our eyes are curved, tend to curve and distort images a little bit. And they're trying to fight against that, creating something that is really more perfect. And before you think that this is, incredible and unlikely, in fact, this is recorded by a Roman architect by the name of Vitruvius. So these are
okay, I hope you got the idea. Actually, what's interesting in the Parthenon is that they want to make it look perfect, so they distort the temple for it to look perfect. And this is how the idea becomes present as such in the building, instead of the building incarnating the idea, which is very different. Let's suppose I want to build a perfectly proportioned building. I will respect the geometrical proportions, and when I look at it, it would be a bit distorted because this is how because of the structure of my eye, which is curved, as he said, and things will not look perfect, but we know that they are perfect. And this is what Plato would call a good copy. A good copy is when you embody the proportions of the idea. Let's say the idea says that something perfect is 1:7 or 1:168, as in the golden ratio, and you simply implement the golden ratio in your building. But here what they're doing, these architects, Ectinos and I forgot the name of the other one, what Ectinos is doing is that he's actually distorting the ratios for them to look perfect instead of them being perfect. And I think Duchamp is making a similar gesture. This is where I hope you'll see this kind of relation. Instead of simply answering or replying to the context, he makes the context as such present, meaning he makes the idea of what we are concerned with present as such in an artwork, and not anymore gives an answer to this idea or try to solve what the requirements of the idea are. Okay, so to make this more clear, and I will conclude on that, you take someone like Kosuth. Kosuth, which is the other big conceptual artist, and Kosuth's most famous work is Three Chairs. So where is it? I think it's here, no? Well, it's not here. So so this is the Three Chairs by Kosuth. I think you know this work. It's very, very famous. And I'll keep it here. It's better. As you can see, there are different chairs. You see, this is not the same chair as this one, which is not the same chair as that one, which is not the same chair as that one. And if you look closely, the definitions are also not the same because they are in different languages. So what is Kosuth doing? Kosuth says art must be an idea as idea. So art as idea as idea. Now, what is he talking about? What he's talking about is this. Kosuth actually is the context in which Kosuth used to operate is very different from the context in which Duchamp was operating. At the days of Duchamp, I've said that the burning question was, what is art today? At the time of Kosuth, which is in the 60s, in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and when he became famous, 80s, the burning question was, as you might know, was that of cultural relativism, which is the question that we can't have universal criteria for artworks because each culture will interpret and appreciate the artworks differently. I hope here you detect culture, custom, which is part of this reflection of the mental image. So Kosuth's solution was not to give different interpretations of different works of art, but to make a work of art that is going itself to be different when it is taken into or exhibited into different cultural contexts. And this is when Kosuth says, well, you know, we're going to make a work of art that consists in simply saying, bring a chair, take a photo of the chair, and bring and put the definition of the chair next to the chair in whatever museum or venue you are. Meaning, if you are in Japan, you bring a Japanese chair, you take the picture of the Japanese chair, and you put the Japanese definition of the chair next to the chair. If you are in France, it's a French chair, French definition, and French picture, in quote, French picture. And this is how the artwork is going itself to become different in the different cultural context. And this is how the interpretation or the context as cultural relativism, the question, can we have works of art which do not vary or which do not vary in different contexts? The answer, which is not an answer here, the proposition of Kosuth is to show you that a work of art itself becomes different in different contexts. And this is how he reflects the context. I hope you understood his trick. And so this is why he says that this is art as idea, as idea. Now, what does it mean, art as idea? Art as idea means art as concept or art as relation. I'm going to make a work of art that simply embodies a relation. This is when you do simple or not very good conceptual art. For example, if you take Kawara used to make artworks like that. These are what he calls the Today series. So he used to make a painting with only the date of the painting on it. So as you can see, this is a kind of painting which is a sign because it only represent the concept. You know, I'm going to make a painting that shows you the date of the painting. Fine. Now, this is not what Kosuth or Duchamp are doing. This is, I think, in quote, bad conceptual art because it doesn't take into consideration the context. And the context at the time of Kawara and at the time of Kosuth, this is why I think Kosuth has had a much better, let's say, reception, is that Kosuth understood that what we need to address today, meaning in the 60s, 70s, is cultural relativism, and he needs to make a work of art that is going to reflect, meaning to make visible as such, in an artwork, the law that is supposed to govern the production of artworks. So I give you a contrast. If you're not a conceptual artist in the 70s, and this you have it all over the globe, in Lebanon, Iraq, France, wherever you want, you would really endorse your cultural identity. You start doing, let's say, if you're in Lebanon, you start doing Arabic letters, or you start doing, I don't know, carpets or stuff like that. And in this case, you would be simply responding to the prerogatives of the context, meaning of what we are asked to do. It is different when you are going to show the law in the work itself, like in the case of Duchamp and Kosuth. For example, Kosuth didn't make an art which is British. What he did is he made a work of art which is itself transformed in the different context, and this is how the work of art reflects the context and how it's able to modify the context. So if you take Duchamp, why Duchamp is very important, including for Kosuth, because when Duchamp was able to show you the law that used to govern his context, which is what is art today and what can we do with art today, instead of doing, let's say, cubism, abstract expressionism, or whatever, instead of doing that, what he did is that he showed you that this question can be itself incarnated in a work of art, and this is how he opened a whole new domain for the arts, which has nothing to do with the old question. And Kosuth is doing the same. Kosuth shows you that cultural relativism can be stopped only when a work of art will become itself different in different contexts, and this is when you open up towards other problems than cultural relativism, which will be, in the case of Kosuth, the political, the ethical, etc. And in the case of Duchamp, the openings that allowed, all kinds of experiments since Duchamp, which claims themselves of Duchamp. And as you can see, Duchamp and Kosuth, they're able to do what? They're able to reflect the law and to change the law. Because since Duchamp, we can't simply now just make art the way we used to do it. So he was able to change the given of the arts at his time. And Kosuth did the same at his time. And the only way to do that is to reflect the law of it. Remains that those artists who change the law of the context, they, in a way, communicate with each other, and they have this kind of, broken genealogy, meaning they talk to each other because their problem is exactly to deal with the law that configures an artistic practice. So now, a last line just for you to sum it up. If you take Hitchcock, Duchamp, Kosuth, but also Frida Kahlo and Gauguin to a lesser degree, take Hitchcock, Duchamp, and Kosuth. What are they doing? What they're doing is that they're showing you in the sensitive realm, meaning in what you see, the workings of the mind. Now, if you take Hitchcock, Hitchcock used to say, me, I don't film action, I film the scenario, I film the script. What does it mean, I film the script? For Hitchcock to film, to tell you the story that a man broke his leg while taking a photo of a car, instead of showing you the man on the car race, taking the photo and being hit by the wheel of the car, and this is how he broke his leg, you see the action. Instead of seeing that, what you see with Hitchcock is simply a series of marks, of mental marks in this case, and when you see that, well, you understand that, you understand what happened. It's very similar. You immediately understand what is going on by simply seeing the images. So I'll show you that. This is the opening scene of Rare Window. This is how.
Are you over 40? When you wake up in the morning, do you feel tired and run down? Do you have that listless feeling?
So I hope you heard. You see, by showing you the cast of his leg, his broken leg, then the broken camera, then the car wheel coming towards him, you understand that actually he broke his leg because of the car kind of accident. And then you understand that he's a photographer, and then he has a fiancée apparently, which works in magazines, and so on and so forth. And he's doing all that without uttering a word, and without showing you the action. So you see, Hitchcock, if you watch it carefully, it's always like that. He always show you actually a series of images, and just by showing you these series of images, which are marks, you understand the mental movement. So what I'm trying to say, if you take Hitchcock, Kosuth, the Parthenon, and Duchamp, what is really, in a way, common between all of these things? What is common is that all of them, to some extent, give you a direct presentation of thought or of the idea or of the concept, and not an indirect representation of ideas, thoughts, or concepts. And this is really like the limit and the accomplishment of the classical art, as we'll see next time, because this is really the point where you will move into something else. So is this clear for those who followed? You have any questions, or we call it a day? It's clear, more or less. Okay. So I hope you'll watch a bit the movies, you'll read the notes, and if you have any questions or you need support, as I've already sent you in many emails, I'm here for that. So if you want to understand, if you want to go, if things are not very clear, you can call me, email me, and I'll be here to answer. Okay?
Thank you.
Okay,
You're fine?
Thank
okay.
you.
Anytime. See you soon.
Bye.
Ciao. Bye.
see you next week.